Chosen one, why are you awake at 3 a.m. calculating pennies when God already calculated your abundance? Why does your bank account scream empty while your prayers go unanswered? Why has every financial door slammed in your face just when you thought breakthrough was finally here? Stop, right there. Don't you dare scroll past this. Something is hunting you down this Saturday, not chasing you to destroy you, but to find you, to deliver what heaven stamped with your name before you ever knew lack. But here's what's going to shatter everything you thought you knew. One wrong move, one single mistake that 90% of believers make without even knowing it can cancel everything. I'm talking to the grandmother in Queens, staring at pill bottles she can't afford. The grandfather in the Bronx who worked 50 years and still wonders if Social Security will cover next month's rent. The widow in Brooklyn who whispers, "God, did you forget my address?" He didn't forget. He's been waiting for this Saturday. Listen to me carefully. This Saturday is not random. It's not coincidence that you found this message today. Heaven's calendar doesn't operate on human schedules. It operates on Kairos time. Divine appointments, sacred intersections. And your name, it just appeared on the ledger. That heaviness you've been carrying in your chest, that's not exhaustion. That's not depression. That's alignment. Your spirit recognizing what your mind can't see yet, a vault opening in the spiritual realm. Supernatural money entering Earth's atmosphere with your coordinates locked in. But there's a storm before every deposit, a test before every testimony, a silence before the shout that brings down walls. If something inside you is already stirring, if your hands started trembling the moment you heard this Saturday, that's confirmation. Type "I receive it" in the comments right now. Let heaven know you're listening. Let this community surround you in agreement. Before we go deeper, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just giving, you're sowing seeds into a harvest that will feed hungry souls across this nation. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. But hear me clearly. There's one mistake, one single error that cancels windfall before it ever reaches your hands. And I'm about to reveal what 99% of preachers won't tell you about Saturday's appointment with destiny. Are you ready to discover what could cost you everything? Why do you feel like you're running out of time when God operates outside of time? Why does your calendar scream too late while heaven whispers right on schedule? Why have you been waiting decades for breakthrough when this Saturday, has been circled in eternity since before you were born? Let me tell you something that's going to shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew about God's timing. There are two clocks ticking in this universe, and most believers spend their entire lives watching the wrong one. The first clock is called Chronos. That's the Greek word for human time, tick-tock time, calendar time, the time that counts your wrinkles, measures your retirement account, and whispers cruel lies like you're too old and you've missed your window. Chronos is the clock that wakes you at 3 a.m. with calculations, Social Security, minus rent, minus prescriptions, minus groceries, equals not enough. Chronos is the time that tells you your best years are behind you, that opportunities belong to younger people, that financial miracles are for those who still have decades ahead of them. But there's another clock, a clock the world cannot see and the enemy cannot touch. The Greeks called it Kairos, divine time, appointed time, the fullness of time. Kairos doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't check your birth certificate or your bank statement. Kairos is the moment when heaven intersects earth with such precision, such power, such perfect orchestration that everything changes in an instant. Think about Moses, 80 years old, when God spoke from a burning bush. 80. The world had written him off. Pharaoh had forgotten his name. Moses himself was tending sheep in the middle of nowhere, convinced his life was over. But God was operating on Kairos time. And on that appointed day, at that appointed hour, Moses went from shepherd to deliverer. From nobody to the man who would split seas and speak face to face with the Almighty. Think about Abraham, 75 years old when God called him to leave everything he knew. Genesis 12:4 tells us plainly, "So Abram went, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran." 75. But 25 years later, at 100 years old, he held Isaac, the promise, the miracle, the child who would father nations. That wasn't Chronos time, that was Kairos. Think about Anna, the prophetess. Luke 2:36-37 describes her. "And there was Anna, a prophetess. She was of a great age, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then as a widow until she was 84 years old, spending every single day in the temple, praying, fasting, waiting. And on the day, the Kairos day, when Mary and Joseph brought baby Jesus, Anna was the first to proclaim the Messiah to Jerusalem. Her moment wasn't cancelled by her age. Her moment was perfected by her faithfulness. Do you see the pattern? Do you see what heaven is trying to tell you? Your age is not your disqualification. It's your authentication. Every year you've survived, every storm you've weathered, every disappointment that should have destroyed you but didn't, that was Chronos preparing you for Kairos. That was human time building character that could handle divine appointments. That was the waiting room before the breakthrough room. And this Saturday is your Kairos hinge. Let me explain what I mean by that. A hinge is the small piece of metal that allows a massive door to swing open. It's not the door itself, it's the pivot point. It's the place where everything turns. Saturday is not just another day on your calendar. Saturday is the hinge moment when heaven's door swings open over your finances, and what's been locked for decades suddenly becomes accessible. But here's what God warned me, and this is where most believers stumble without even knowing they're falling. This window comes with conditions. Divine appointments aren't automatic. Kairos moments require Kairos responses. There are spiritual protocols, sacred alignments, specific actions that activate breakthrough, and specific mistakes that cancel it. I'm not talking about superstition. I'm talking about scripture. I'm talking about divine order. I'm talking about the difference between the 5 wise virgins who had oil when the bridegroom came and the 5 foolish ones who missed their moment because they weren't prepared. You've lived long enough to know that timing is everything, haven't you? You've seen how one conversation can change a career, one decision can alter a marriage, one open door can redirect an entire life. You've watched younger people stumble into opportunities they didn't appreciate while you sat there thinking, if only I had that chance at their age. But what if age is exactly what qualifies you for this Saturday's windfall? What if God has been waiting for you to reach this exact season of your life when you've seen enough to be grateful, suffered enough to be humble, and trusted Him long enough to be faithful before He releases what He's been holding in heaven's vault with your name on it? This isn't about working harder. This isn't about another get-rich-quick scheme. This isn't about human hustle. This is about divine alignment. This is about being in the right spiritual posture when the Kairos train pulls into your station. And beloved, that train doesn't wait. It doesn't circle back. It arrives once, and if you're not ready, it moves on. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season of lack has an expiration date. Your season of struggle has a deadline, and I'm telling you, that deadline is Saturday. But there's something you need to understand about Kairos moments. They're not passive. They're not something you just wait for like you're waiting for a bus. They require response. They require action. They require you to do something most believers refuse to do because it feels uncomfortable, it looks foolish, or it contradicts everything the world has taught them about money. If you feel Saturday pulling on your spirit already, if something inside you shifted the moment I said, Kairos hinge type, "This is my Kairos" in the comments right now. Let heaven take notice. Let this community stand in agreement with your breakthrough. Because what I'm about to reveal next is the one mistake, the one devastating error that will cancel everything God has prepared for you this Saturday. And I promise you, it's not what you think. You know what nobody tells you about the week before breakthrough? It feels like hell is personally assigned to your address. Let me ask you something that might cut deep. Have you been unusually tired this week? Not the normal tired from a long day. I'm talking about bone-deep exhaustion that makes you wonder if something's wrong with your body. You wake up and you're already drained. You pray and the words feel like lead falling from your mouth. You try to stay hopeful, but it's like someone turned off the oxygen in your spirit. That's not random, chosen one. That's not your age catching up with you. That's warfare. Listen to me carefully. Every single believer who's ever stood on the edge of a financial windfall has experienced what I call the shake before the shift. It's that strange, unexplainable resistance that shows up right when God's about to move. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you'll sabotage your own blessing before it ever reaches your hands. Think about what's happened to you in the last 7 days. Maybe it was that phone call out of nowhere, someone from your past stirring up old wounds, old arguments, old pain. Maybe it was that unexpected bill that showed up in your mailbox, the one that made your stomach drop because you just got your finances stable. Maybe it was that sudden wave of doubt that crashed over you at 2 a.m. whispering, "God's not going to come through this time." You've been praying for years and nothing's changed. You thought that was just life. I'm telling you, that's confirmation. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty vessels, beloved. He doesn't send his forces after people who pose no threat to his kingdom. But when heaven marks a date on the calendar with your name on it, when supernatural money is being loaded into the delivery system with your address coded in, hell mobilizes. Not to stop the blessing, he can't stop what God has already released, but to stop you from receiving it. Here's what's going to shock you. The attack isn't proof that the blessing isn't coming. The attack is the proof that it's already on the way. Think about Israel. They spent 40 years in the wilderness, and finally, they're standing at the edge of Canaan. The promised land is right there. Milk and honey, abundance, everything God swore to give them. They can see it from where they're standing. But what happens? Numbers chapter 13 records it. The spies go in, they come back, and 10 of them say, "We can't do this. The giants are too big, the walls are too high. We looked like grasshoppers in our own sight." They were standing on the doorstep of destiny, and they talked themselves out of it. They let fear cancel what faith had already secured, and that entire generation died in the wilderness, never touching what God had prepared for them. You want to know what breaks my heart? That's happening right now in living rooms across America. Seniors who've prayed for decades, who've sowed seeds in faith, who've believed God for breakthrough, they're standing at their Red Sea moment, and they're about to turn back because the enemy whispered one lie at the right time. But here's the pattern you need to recognize. Every major move of God in Scripture was preceded by intense spiritual resistance. Moses at the Red Sea had Pharaoh's army charging behind him. David, before killing Goliath, had his own brothers mocking him. Esther, before saving her people, had to risk her life walking into the king's court uninvited. Jesus, before the resurrection, had to endure the cross. The pressure isn't proof you're going the wrong direction. The pressure is proof you're going the right direction, and hell knows it. So let me tell you what's really happening this week. That fatigue you're feeling, your spirit is being prepared to carry weight it's never carried before. That discouragement that keeps trying to settle on you, that's the enemy's last-ditch effort to make you quit before Saturday arrives. Those unexpected conflicts, those surprise bills, those phone calls from negative people, they're all orchestrated distractions designed to shift your focus from what God is doing to what the devil is saying. But I need you to understand something that will change everything. When the enemy shows up with unusual intensity, he's not attacking you because you're weak. He's attacking you because he sees what's coming that you can't see yet. He sees the vault opening. He sees the transfer being processed. He sees Saturday marked on heaven's calendar with your name written in the Lamb's book of life. And he's terrified. Job 1:10 records Satan complaining to God, "Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has?" Even the enemy acknowledges that God protects what belongs to him. But when God lifts that hedge temporarily to allow testing, it's never random. It's always purposeful. Job lost everything, but when God restored him, the Bible says he gave him twice as much as he had before. Your testing has an expiration date. Your warfare has a purpose. And Saturday is when the story shifts. If you've felt unusual resistance this week, if fatigue hit you out of nowhere, if doubt has been louder than usual, if unexpected chaos tried to derail your peace comment, this is confirmation right now. Because what you thought was attack is actually announcement. Heaven is announcing that your season is shifting, and hell is responding with panic. But here's what you need to know about Saturday's windfall. It's not just going to show up automatically. There's one critical move you must make, one action that determines whether you receive or whether you forfeit. And what I'm about to reveal next will expose the single mistake that has cost more believers their breakthrough than any attack the enemy could ever launch. Are you ready to discover what most people do wrong at the exact moment their miracle arrives? Beloved, what I'm about to tell you might be the most important thing you hear all year. And if you miss this, if you let this truth slip past you, Saturday's windfall will pass right over your house like the angel of death skipped the Israelites who had no blood on their doorposts. There is one mistake, one fatal error that cancels blessings before they ever touch your bank account. And 90% of believers make it without even knowing they're doing it. Are you ready? Because this is going to cut deep. The mistake is this: stepping into conflict or emotional reaction in the hours before your blessing lands. I know what you're thinking. That's it? That's the big revelation? But listen to me carefully, chosen one. This isn't about being nice. This isn't about positive thinking. This is about spiritual alignment. And when you break alignment, you shatter the very atmosphere your blessing needs to manifest. Let me show you something that will shake you to your core. Moses, the great deliverer, the man who spoke face to face with God, the one who parted the Red Sea and brought water from rocks. But there was one moment, one single moment of reaction that cost him everything. Numbers 20 tells us the Israelites were complaining again, demanding water. And Moses, frustrated, angry, at his breaking point, struck the rock twice in rage instead of speaking to it as God commanded. What happened? God said in verse 12, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." One reaction, one moment of emotional chaos, and Moses lost Canaan. Think about that. 40 years of faithful service, supernatural miracles, direct conversations with the Almighty. But one moment of reaction cancelled his entrance into the promised land. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Your windfall this Saturday is already prepared. The check is already signed. The door is already opening. But if your spirit gets rattled, if you allow yourself to be pulled into chaos, that blessing has nowhere to land. Let me give you another example that might hit closer to home. Esau, Genesis 25. This man was the firstborn son of Isaac. The birthright was his by divine right. The blessing belonged to him. But one day, he came home tired and hungry. His brother Jacob was cooking stew, and Esau said those fatal words, "I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" He traded his entire inheritance for one bowl of soup because he reacted emotionally instead of thinking spiritually. He let his physical state dictate his spiritual decision. And Genesis 27-38 records the most heartbreaking moment in Scripture. When Esau realized what he'd lost, he cried out to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." And he wept aloud. But it was too late. The blessing was gone. One emotional reaction, one moment of, "I can't take this anymore," and his destiny was transferred to someone else. Now let me bring this into your living room, into your kitchen, into your real life this week. Your daughter is going to call you Thursday night. She's going to say something that triggers every nerve in your body. Something about money you lent her. Something about how you raised her. Something that makes your blood pressure spike and your hands shake with anger. That's the test. Your neighbor is going to knock on your door Friday afternoon with another complaint, another accusation, another petty argument about the property line or the noise, or something so insignificant it shouldn't matter. But it will feel huge. It will feel urgent. Your flesh will want to defend, to fight back, to prove you're right. That's the trap. Saturday morning, you're going to check your bank account out of habit, out of fear, out of that old pattern of panic. And when you see the same low number you've been seeing for months, doubt is going to whisper, "See, nothing's changed. This preacher was lying. God forgot about you again." That's the kill shot. Because here's what most believers don't understand. Your windfall is spiritual first, financial second. It's not just money appearing in your account. It's a supernatural transaction that begins in the heavenly realm and manifests in the natural. But for that manifestation to occur, the landing strip must stay clear. Think of it like this. A plane carrying your blessing is circling overhead right now. The pilot can see your house. The coordinates are locked in. But if your landing strip is covered with debris, anger, arguments, anxiety, chaos, that plane cannot land, it will circle, it will wait. And if the storm doesn't clear, it will redirect to someone else whose ground is ready. Don't dig up the soil right before the rain. I've watched this happen for 50 years in ministry. I've seen people on the verge of breakthrough destroy it with their mouth. I've seen families about to receive inheritance lose it over a stupid argument. I've seen seniors miss their miracle because they couldn't control their reaction to a rude cashier, a late bill, or a thoughtless comment from a grandchild. The enemy knows your windfall is coming. He knows Saturday is marked. So what does he do? He sends provocations. He stirs up old wounds. He manufactures conflict in the 11th hour to knock you out of alignment. James 1:19 gives us the blueprint. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Why? Because the next verse tells us, human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Your anger, your reaction, your emotional chaos, it doesn't produce the blessing God is trying to give you. It repels it. So here's what you're going to do. Right now, before Friday, before Saturday, before your daughter calls or your neighbor knocks or doubt whispers, say this out loud, wherever you are. I refuse conflict this Saturday. Say it again. Louder. I refuse conflict this Saturday. Now type it in the comments. Seal it. Make it a covenant between you and heaven. Let this community be your witnesses. Because, beloved, the windfall is real. Saturday is marked. Your name is on the ledger. But the question that will determine whether you receive it or watch it pass over your house is this. Will you guard your peace like your life depends on it? Because your breakthrough does. You want to know why your last breakthrough never came? Why that financial miracle you prayed for dissolved into thin air just when you could taste it? I'll tell you exactly why, and it's going to cut deep. You weren't prepared to receive it. Listen to me, chosen one. Heaven doesn't drop million-dollar miracles into chaotic lives. God doesn't wire supernatural funds into cluttered spiritual accounts. You've been begging for provision while your soul looks like a hoarder's basement full of fear, doubt, unforgiveness, and the toxic conversations you had yesterday that poisoned your atmosphere. This Saturday, a financial windfall is coming. But if you think you can just wake up, drink your coffee, scroll through Facebook drama, argue with your daughter-in-law about Thanksgiving plans, and then casually receive what heaven is releasing, you're about to watch your blessing pass right by your door like the angel of death in Egypt. The Israelites didn't just pray for deliverance, they followed protocol. Exodus 12:22 says, "Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood, and put it on the top and on both sides of the doorframe. None of you shall go out of the door of your house until morning. Specific instructions, divine protocol, life or death, obedience. Your Saturday has protocol too. I need you to understand something that's going to shake everything you thought you knew about receiving from God. Preparation isn't optional. It's the difference between walking into abundance and watching it slip through your fingers like water through a broken bucket. So here's exactly what you're going to do. Not suggestions, not recommendations. This is military precision for a spiritual invasion of blessing into your natural circumstances. Saturday morning, you will wake up and sit in complete silence for 15 minutes. Not prayer yet, not intercession, just silence. Proverbs 17:28 says, "Even fools are thought wise if they keep silent." Stillness is spiritual currency. In that silence, you're creating space for God to move. You're sweeping the runway before a divine landing. Most of you can't sit still for 15 seconds without grabbing your phone. But I'm telling you right now, if you can't master silence, you can't master millions. If you can't sit quietly with God for 15 minutes, how will you steward the overflow He's about to release? Next, you will avoid all arguments on Saturday, every single one. I don't care if your son calls with another excuse about why he needs money. I don't care if your neighbor starts drama over the property line. I don't care if the customer service representative at the phone company deserves to be told off. Proverbs 26:21 warns, "As charcoal to embers and as wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome person for kindling strife." One argument can cancel your windfall. One heated conversation can slam shut the window heaven just opened. Because when you engage in conflict, you're announcing to the spiritual realm that you're not ready for peace. And chosen one, prosperity doesn't flow into warfare, it flows into peace. Guard your mouth like it's the key to your bank vault, because it is. Then you're going to do something that will feel impossible. You're going to sit down with a piece of paper and write out every financial fear you're carrying. The medical bills, the mortgage, the credit card debt, the fear of outliving your savings, the shame of asking your kids for help. Write every single one, and then you're going to surrender them. Out loud. God, I release my fear about the electric bill. I release my anxiety about next month's rent. I give you my shame, my worry, my desperate calculations at 3 a.m. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, we're to take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ. This isn't metaphor, this is warfare. After you've surrendered your fears, you're going to write one declaration on a fresh piece of paper. I welcome supernatural provision. Not I need, not I hope, not maybe, if God feels like it. You write, I welcome supernatural provision, and you're going to put that paper somewhere you'll see it all day. On your mirror, on your refrigerator, next to your coffee maker. Words create worlds. Your declaration is a landing strip for heaven's cargo plane. Now here's where most believers miss it completely. You're going to give something away on Saturday, a small act of kindness, a seed. Maybe it's $5 to someone who needs it more than you. Maybe it's a meal you prepare for a neighbor. Maybe it's a phone call to encourage someone who's drowning in despair. Luke 6:38 promises, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. But you can't receive with clenched fists. You have to open your hands first. The seed you plant on Saturday morning is the tree you'll harvest from Sunday forward. And here's the final instruction that will require every ounce of discipline you possess. Guard your conversations. Do not, I repeat, do not tell everyone what you're believing for. Don't post on Facebook about your coming windfall. Don't call your sister and gossip about how God spoke to you through a YouTube video. Ecclesiastes 5:3 warns, a dream comes when there are many cares, and many words mark the speech of a fool. Your miracle is too precious to be discussed with people who don't have the spiritual capacity to protect it. Silence isn't secrecy, it's stewardship. Because late Saturday afternoon, something shifts in the atmosphere. A door opens that's been sealed, a window cracks that's been shut, and you must recognize the moment when it comes. Type I will follow the protocol right now if you're ready to prepare the altar for what heaven is about to release. But here's what nobody's telling you about Saturday's windfall, and this is where most believers lose everything they've been preparing for. You want to know what Saturday looks like when heaven opens a financial portal? Let me paint you a picture that's going to make your spirit tremble with recognition. Most people think miracles arrive with trumpets and fanfare. They expect angels on their doorstep with a check signed by God Almighty. But that's not how divine provision moves through the earth realm, beloved. It moves like a thief in the night, quiet, unexpected, through doors so small you might miss them if you're not paying attention. This Saturday isn't just another day on your calendar. It's marked, sealed, appointed by heaven itself. And the way this blessing enters your life will test everything you think you know about how God operates. Listen to me carefully. Saturday morning, you're going to wake up feeling different. Not bad different, but weighted, like someone placed a hand on your shoulder while you slept. Your chest might feel heavy, but it's not your heart giving out. It's your spirit recognizing that something ancient and eternal just shifted into your timeline. That's the first sign. Don't dismiss it as old age or fatigue. That's alignment happening in real time. Proverbs 10:22 says, "The blessing of the Lord brings wealth, without painful toil for it." Notice it doesn't say the blessing arrives with clarity. It arrives first with weight, with presence, with a heaviness that makes you pause and wonder, what's different about today? By midday, something strange will settle over you. An unusual calm. You know that anxiety that's been your companion for months, the one that wakes you at 3 a.m. wondering how you'll pay next month's bills. It'll be gone, replaced by a peace that makes no logical sense. Your circumstances haven't changed yet, but your spirit knows something your mind hasn't caught up to. That's not denial, dear one. That's prophetic confirmation. You're standing in the eye of a supernatural storm, and the winds of provision are circling your address. Isaiah 26:3 declares, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." That peace isn't the absence of trouble, it's the presence of answered prayer moving toward you at the speed of heaven. Then comes late afternoon. This is when it gets mystical. This is when the spiritual atmosphere becomes so thick you can almost taste it. The wind in the unseen realm begins to move. You might feel tingling in your hands. That's not your circulation. That's divine electricity. A sudden memory might flood your mind. Something from 20 years ago that makes no sense right now, but will make perfect sense by evening. Your phone might ring with a voice you haven't heard in months. A peace will settle over your home so profound it feels like angels just took up residence in your living room. This is the moment most believers miss the miracle, because they're looking for the spectacular when God is moving through the specific. Let me tell you something that's going to wreck every theology you've been taught. God always sends provision through a door that feels too small. Always. He sent David's deliverance through a slingshot and 5 smooth stones when everyone expected an army. He sent the widow's oil through a borrowed jar when she expected cash. He sent Peter's tax money through a fish's mouth when any reasonable person would have expected a benefactor. Why does God operate this way? Because He's not just sending you money, beloved. He's teaching you to recognize His voice in the whisper so you won't miss Him in the roar. He's training your spiritual eyes to see His hand in the small so you'll trust Him in the magnificent. By evening, the landing happens. This is where the blessing enters the earth realm and takes physical form. It might be an email you almost delete, a letter in your mailbox you almost throw away, a phone call from someone you haven't spoken to in years, offering you something that seems too small to matter, a thought that drops into your mind about a skill you have, a service you could offer, an item you could sell. Don't you dare reject the small beginning. Don't you dare say, "This can't be it. I need thousands and this is only hundreds." Remember Zechariah 4:10. Who dares despise the day of small things? That small thing is the seed of your harvest. That tiny door is the entrance to your abundance. That insignificant-looking opportunity is heaven's delivery system wrapped in humility. The grandmother who finds $20 in an old coat pocket and uses it to buy lottery tickets, that's not faith, that's presumption. But the grandmother who finds that same $20 and remembers she can bake and sells pies to her neighbors and by month's end has a thriving business, that's divine strategy disguised as a small beginning. You're not waiting for a miracle to fall from the sky on Saturday. You're waiting for eyes to see the miracle that's been positioned right in front of you. The provision isn't coming, it's arriving. And arrival requires recognition. So let me ask you straight. Are you ready to recognize heaven's delivery system even when it doesn't look like what you expected? Are you prepared to say yes to the small door that leads to supernatural supply? Drop "I'm watching" for the moment in the comments if you're ready, because what happens next will reveal the one mistake that cancels everything, and you need to know it before Saturday arrives. Now listen to me, beloved. I need you to stop right where you are and hear what I'm about to say, because the enemy has been whispering a lie in your ear for so long that you've started to believe it's the truth. He's been telling you that your best days are behind you, that your season of blessing expired with your youth, that at 70, 75, 80 years old, God's moved on to younger vessels with stronger bodies and sharper minds. He's convinced you that the wrinkles on your face are proof that heaven's blessings have dried up like old wells in the desert. But that is a lie straight from the pit of hell. The world looks at your silver hair and sees decline, but heaven looks at your silver hair and sees a crown. The world counts your years and says you're running out of time, but the Almighty counts your years and says you're running into your appointed hour. Society whispers that you should step aside, fade quietly into the background, accept less. But God is thundering from his throne saying, not yet, not now, their finest hour is just beginning. You want to know why the enemy works so hard to convince you that you're too old? Because he knows something you've forgotten. He knows that the older you get, the more dangerous you become to his kingdom. He knows that seasoned saints carry an authority that youth cannot manufacture. He knows that your prayers don't just reach heaven, they move it. Let me tell you about Abraham. 75 years old when God called him to leave everything he knew and step into a promise he couldn't see. Most people would say he was past his prime, ready for retirement, too old for adventure. But God said, now you're ready. Now you have what it takes. And by the time Abraham was 100 years old, he was holding Isaac, the child of promise, the beginning of nations, the seed that would bless every family on earth. Genesis 21:5 tells us plainly, Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. 100 years old. Think about that. Or consider Job. The Bible says he lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health, and sat in ashes, scraping his skin with broken pottery, wondering if God had abandoned him. But in Job 42:10, Scripture records something that will shake you to your core. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. Twice as much, not in his youth, not in his prime. In his later years, after suffering, after loss, after everyone had written him off as cursed. God doesn't just restore you in old age, he doubles you. And then there's Anna. Luke 2:36-37 tells us she was 84 years old, widowed after only 7 years of marriage, spending decades in the temple praying and fasting while everyone else went home to their families. The world would have called her forgotten, invisible, irrelevant. But when baby Jesus was brought to the temple, Anna was the first woman to recognize the Messiah of the world. Her age wasn't her limitation, it was her qualification. She had lived long enough to recognize what younger eyes couldn't see. Your age is not your weakness, your age is your weapon. Every year you've survived, every storm you've weathered, every night you cried yourself to sleep and still woke up the next morning, that wasn't just endurance, that was training. You've been in God's boot camp, and now he's about to deploy you into the greatest season of provision you've ever experienced. But I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're sitting there wondering, have I missed it? Is it too late? Did God's blessing pass me by while I wasn't looking? And the fear in your chest feels so real, doesn't it? The worry that Saturday will come and go, and nothing will change. The terror that you've somehow disqualified yourself through your mistakes, your doubts, your failures. Let me tell you something that's going to set you free. The very fact that you're hearing this message right now is proof that you're early, not late. You didn't stumble across this video by accident. Heaven interrupted your scroll. The Spirit of God pulled you into this moment because your name is on Saturday's delivery list. You're not too old. You're not too broken. You're not too late. You are precisely positioned at precisely the right time for precisely what God has been preparing. Do you understand what this means? It means every closed door was protection. Every delay was positioning. Every year you spent wondering if God remembered you. He was building something inside you that could handle what's coming. Because easy money ruins unprepared people, but tested people can steward supernatural wealth. You survived too much for God to leave you empty-handed. Think about it. You survived the depression, or heard stories from parents who did. You survived wars, recessions, losses that would have destroyed weaker souls. You buried spouses, raised children, walked through valleys so dark you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. But you're still here, still breathing, still believing. That's not luck, beloved. That's proof. Old trees grow the strongest roots. That's why when storms come, the young trees fall while the ancient oaks stand firm. Your roots run deep into the soil of God's faithfulness. You've learned to draw water from sources the world can't see. And now, this Saturday, heaven is about to pour rain on ground that's been prepared by decades of faithful waiting. Elders hear God clearer because they've lived long enough to recognize His footsteps. You know the sound of His voice in the dark. You know the weight of His presence in the silence. You know the difference between human promises and divine guarantees. Your age is not your disadvantage, it's your advantage. Right now, I need you to do something. I need you to declare it out loud, wherever you are. Say it with me. My age is my advantage. My years are my authority. My scars are my credentials. I am not too old to receive what God has promised. Say it until you feel it. Say it until the lie breaks. Say it until your spirit rises up and remembers who you are. Because Saturday is coming, beloved, and everything that's been delayed, denied, and postponed is about to be delivered. But you need to understand something critical, something that most believers miss entirely, something that, if you get it wrong, can cancel everything heaven has prepared. What is the one move that stops windfall in its tracks? You felt it, didn't you? That shift in the atmosphere when I said Saturday. Something deep in your chest recognized what your mind couldn't explain. That wasn't excitement, beloved. That was confirmation. Your spirit already knows what's coming. It's been preparing your entire life for this exact moment. But let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. What lands on Saturday isn't the end of your story. It's the ignition. The windfall you're about to receive, that's not God's final word over your life. That's His opening statement. Listen to me carefully. The blessing is not the destination. The blessing is the key. And there's a door standing in front of you right now that you haven't even noticed yet. A door that's been there your whole life, waiting for this Saturday to finally give you what you need to open it. You see, most believers think God blesses them to make them comfortable, to finally give them relief, to let them rest after decades of struggle. And yes, He does want to give you rest, but not the kind of rest this world understands. Isaiah 40:31 says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." Mount up, not sit down, not retire, not fade away. Mount up. God is not blessing you to end your journey. He's blessing you to launch your legacy. Think about Abraham. God promised him wealth, land, nations. Genesis 13:2 tells us, Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. But that wealth wasn't the point. It was the fuel. Abraham needed resources to become the father of multitudes. His blessing was preparation for his purpose. And you? Your Saturday windfall is preparation for something you can't even see yet. But here's where most people lose everything. They receive the blessing and think they've arrived. They get the check, pay the bills, breathe a sigh of relief, and go back to sleep. And 6 months later, they're right back where they started, wondering what happened. Why? Because they treated the seed like the harvest. They consumed what they were supposed to cultivate. Let me ask you something that might sting. How many times has God blessed you in the past, and you spent it all on immediate relief instead of eternal impact? How many windfalls have you received over 70, 80 years of life that disappeared because you didn't understand what they were for? You thought God was giving you money, but He was giving you mission fuel. This time is different. This time, you're going to know before the blessing arrives what it's actually for. You're not going to make the same mistake again. Here's what heaven has been hiding from you until this moment. Every financial struggle you've endured, every bankruptcy, every foreclosure, every night you've eaten beans from a can that wasn't just suffering, that was training. God has been preparing you to handle wealth without it destroying you, to receive abundance without it corrupting you, to carry blessing without it making you forget the blesser. You know why most lottery winners end up broke within 5 years? Because money without mission is a curse disguised as a blessing. But you've been refined in the furnace. You've learned to worship in lack. You've proven you'll serve God with nothing, which means you can be trusted with everything. Saturday's windfall is God saying, you've passed the test. Now here's the assignment. But there's a mystery here that's going to change everything you thought you understood about your life. What if every closed door, every delayed answer, every decade you spent waiting wasn't about you learning patience? What if it was about positioning? What if God was waiting for the world to become desperate enough to need what only you can give? Think about Joseph, sold into slavery at 17, falsely accused at 25. Forgotten in prison until he was 30. 13 years of absolute injustice. But Genesis 41-46 says, Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 30. Not 17, not 25, 30. Why? Because the famine was coming in 7 years, and Joseph needed to be positioned with authority before the crisis hit. Your Saturday blessing is arriving because there's a crisis coming that only you are equipped to solve. Your family needs what you're about to carry. Your community needs the testimony you're about to walk in. This generation needs to see what God looks like when He vindicates someone who refused to quit. The windfall is not your reward for surviving. It's your equipment for thriving. It's not your retirement package. It's your deployment orders. You thought you were being blessed to finally rest, but God is blessing you to finally rise. And here's the question that will determine whether you multiply this blessing or lose it like you've lost others. Are you ready to stop living for comfort and start living for calling? Are you ready to let this Saturday be the day your entire bloodline changes? Are you ready to be the ancestor your great-grandchildren thank God for? Because, beloved, the blessing that's coming isn't just for you, it's for everyone connected to you, but only if you understand what it's really for. Comment, I'm still here if you're ready for part 2 of your calling, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what Saturday's windfall is designed to unlock, and why the enemy has been fighting so hard to keep you from this moment. You thought this was about paying off your mortgage, didn't you? You thought God was opening heaven's vault just so you could finally afford those prescriptions, fix that leaking roof, or stop lying awake at 3 a.m. doing math that never adds up. But what if I told you that's not even 10% of why Saturday is marked on heaven's calendar? Listen to me, chosen one. God didn't release this supernatural windfall just to patch the holes in your budget. He's not interested in making you comfortable while your bloodline stays cursed. This money, this divine deposit heading toward you right now, it's carrying an assignment so massive that if you treat it like a lottery ticket, it will slip through your fingers like water through a sieve. You see, there's something the enemy has been hiding from you for decades, something the prosperity preachers won't tell you because it requires sacrifice, not just celebration. This blessing isn't just for you, it's flowing through you. And if you dam it up with selfishness, if you hoard it with fear, if you spend it without discernment, heaven will reroute it to someone who understands the mission. Let me paint you a picture that's going to cut deep. You're 70, 80, maybe 90 years old. You've watched your children struggle with the same financial demons you fought. You've seen your grandchildren inherit poverty like it's written in their DNA. You've prayed for breakthrough, cried for deliverance, begged God to do something, anything to stop the cycle. And now He's about to answer, but not the way you expected. You're not just older, beloved. You're rooted. You've got 60, 70, 80 years of walking with God. You've seen Him provide when the cupboard was bare. You've witnessed miracles that this TikTok generation will never believe. You carry wisdom that can't be downloaded, faith that can't be Googled, prayers that have been marinating in heaven's throne room for decades. God is about to put supernatural wealth in your hands because you're the only one qualified to handle it without losing your soul. Think about Abraham. Genesis 12:2 says, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing." Did you catch that? God didn't say, "I will bless you so you can retire in Florida and play shuffleboard." He said you will be a blessing. The blessing had a job. It had an assignment. It had generational implications. Abraham didn't get wealthy for himself. He got wealthy so that through his seed, all nations would be blessed. Every dollar that came into his tent was marked for destiny, not just for comfort. That's you this Saturday. You're Abraham in the Bronx. You're Sarah in Queens. You're the patriarch, the matriarch, the elder who's been positioned by heaven to break the financial curse that's been strangling your family tree for generations. But here's where it gets dangerous. Here's where most believers stumble right at the finish line. If you misunderstand the purpose of this windfall, it will confuse you instead of strengthen you. If you think this money is just about you finally catching a break after 50 years of hard work, you'll spend it on things that rust and rot. You'll buy comfort when God sent you capital. You'll invest in temporary relief when heaven is offering eternal impact. Proverbs 13:22 declares, "A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children." Not just for their children, for their children's children. That's 3 generations, beloved. That's 100 years of provision. That's a legacy that outlives your body and continues to speak after you're gone. God is about to put something in your hands that your great-grandchildren will benefit from, but only if you understand what you're carrying. Let me tell you something that's going to shake you. A seed grows only in the right soil. Even gold can rot in the wrong hands. I've watched believers receive 6-figure settlements, lottery winnings, inheritance money, and within 18 months, they're broker than they were before. Why? Because they treated a divine assignment like a personal jackpot. The widow in 1 Kings 17 had 1 handful of flour and a little oil left. 1 meal between her and starvation. But when Elijah asked her to feed him first, she had to make a choice. Is this blessing for me alone, or is there a bigger picture I can't see yet? She chose to sow, and her flour never ran out. Her oil never dried up, not just for a day, for years. Through the entire famine, her house overflowed because she understood the assignment behind the provision. You're that widow, chosen one. Saturday is your Elijah moment. And what you do with the first portion of this windfall will determine whether it multiplies or evaporates. But there's a second mistake believers make after the blessing arrives. A mistake so subtle, so seemingly innocent, that it crushes the harvest before it even takes root. I'm going to reveal it to you in just a moment, but first, I need you to understand something with crystal clarity. If you know in your spirit that this blessing is bigger than money, if something inside you is recognizing that you've been chosen not just for breakthrough, but for bloodline shift, type "I carry purpose" in the comments right now, because what I'm about to tell you next will separate those who receive and lose from those who receive and multiply, and the difference between the two. It has nothing to do with how much money shows up, and everything to do with what you do in the first 72 hours after it arrives. Are you ready to hear the mistake that's about to cost most believers everything? Now listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you has destroyed more financial miracles than doubt ever could. It's killed more breakthroughs than unbelief, and it's stolen more blessings than the enemy himself. The second mistake is this: moving too fast. I know what you're thinking. Pastor, you just told me Saturday is coming. You just said my windfall is on the way. Now you're telling me not to move. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Because, beloved, there's a difference between moving in faith and running in fear. Let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. When that check finally comes, when that unexpected money hits your account, when that blessing you've been praying for finally manifests, what's the first thing you're going to do? Be honest with yourself. You're going to grab it and run, aren't you? You're going to pay every bill, fix every problem, help every person, solve every crisis in one frantic afternoon. And that's exactly how you'll abort the miracle before it multiplies. You see, there's something most preachers won't tell you about supernatural provision. It doesn't come all at once. God doesn't drop $1 million in your lap on Monday and say, "Figure it out." No. He gives it to you in stages, in layers, in divine sequences that require something most of us have forgotten how to do: rest, stillness, sacred waiting. Think about this. When a mother gives birth, what's the first thing that baby needs? Movement? Activity? No, that child needs to be held, covered, kept warm while its lungs learn to breathe Earth's air. There's a reason hospitals don't hand you your newborn and say, "Good luck, see you later." There's an incubation period, a time of adjustment, a season of protection while fragile life strengthens. Your blessing works the same way. But here's what breaks my heart. I watch seniors, beautiful, faithful, praying saints who've waited decades for breakthrough, and the moment God releases provision, they panic, they rush, they try to fix 50 years of lack in 5 hours. They help their daughter in Chicago, their son in Atlanta, their sister in Florida, and by sunset, the blessing is gone, and they're right back where they started. Why? Because they moved before the wind settled. Let me take you to 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah, the mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven, is running for his life. He's exhausted, he's broken, he's ready to die under that broom tree. And what does God do? Does he immediately send him back into battle? Does he rush him into his next assignment? No. First, God lets him sleep. Then God feeds him. Then God lets him sleep again. Then God feeds him again. 40 days and 40 nights, the Bible says, Elijah rested. 40 days of divine incubation before God even spoke to him about what came next. And when God finally did speak, where was Elijah? In a cave, in stillness, in silence. And the Bible says there was a great wind, but God wasn't in the wind. There was an earthquake, but God wasn't in the earthquake. There was fire, but God wasn't in the fire. And then came a still, small voice. Chosen one. God was teaching Elijah, and he's teaching you that after the storm comes stillness. After the breakthrough comes the incubation. After the windfall comes the waiting. Because there are 3 spiritual stages after every major blessing, and most believers quit after stage 1. Stage 1 is reception. You receive the blessing, the money comes, the door opens, the provision arrives, and you feel that rush, that excitement, that finally, after all these years, moment. But if you stop there, if you immediately spend it all, give it all away, scatter it to every need screaming for attention, you'll never reach stage 2. Stage 2 is multiplication. This is where God intended to take that seed blessing and grow it into generational wealth. This is where He wanted to teach you His economy, His principles, His divine mathematics, where 5 loaves feed 5,000. But multiplication requires time. It requires patience. It requires you to hold the blessing long enough for heaven's interest to compound. And stage 3? Stage 3 is distribution. This is where you become the answer to someone else's prayer, where your overflow becomes their breakthrough, where your testimony becomes their hope. But you can't distribute what you never allowed to multiply. Here's what most of you don't understand. That guilt you carry about the years you think you lost, that shame about not saving enough, not planning better, not doing more when you were younger, the enemy is using that guilt to make you rush. He's whispering, "You don't have time to wait. You're 75 years old. You need to fix everything now." But God is saying, "I didn't bring you this far to watch you panic. I didn't preserve you through decades of lack just to watch you waste the windfall in a weekend. Sit down, be still. Let me show you what to do with what I'm about to give you." Proverbs 21 verse 5 says it plainly. "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty." Did you catch that? Haste leads to poverty. Speed kills the blessing. So when Saturday comes, when that supernatural money enters your account, when that check arrives, when that unexpected provision manifests, I need you to do something that will feel completely unnatural. I need you to stop, sit down, get on your knees, and ask God, "What do you want me to do with this?" Not what your daughter needs, not what your bills demand, not what your guilt screams. What does God want? Because, beloved, if you move too fast, you'll rip the wings off the blessing before it ever learns to fly. Say it with me right now. Say it out loud wherever you are. I will not rush. Write it in the comments. Seal it in your spirit. Declare it over your windfall. But there's one more mistake, the deadliest one of all, and if you don't catch this next truth, everything I've told you won't matter. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Most believers pray for breakthrough their entire lives, but when it finally arrives, they abort it within 72 hours, not because they're faithless, not because they're unworthy, but because nobody ever taught them what happens after heaven says yes. You think the windfall is the end of the story? No, beloved. The windfall is the beginning of a process so sacred, so transformative, that hell itself will mobilize to interrupt it before it completes. This Saturday, when supernatural money begins moving toward your life, you need to understand something that will determine whether you keep it or lose it. A blessing has a metabolism. Stay with me. This is going to save your life. You see, your body doesn't just receive food and stay the same. It digests, it transforms, it converts nutrition into energy, waste into elimination, potential into power. That's metabolism. And every financial blessing from heaven follows the exact same pattern. 3 stages, 3 tests, 3 moments where most people fail without ever knowing why. Stage 1 is Saturday, the moment of receiving. Here's what's going to shock you. When the windfall first touches your life, it won't feel like a windfall. It will feel like a whisper, a small confirmation, a quiet door cracking open. Maybe it's a phone call you weren't expecting. Maybe it's an idea that drops into your spirit at 4 a.m. Maybe it's a person who suddenly remembers you after years of silence. And because it doesn't look like the earthquake you prayed for, you'll be tempted to dismiss it. That's not God, you'll say. That's just coincidence. But Elijah learned in that cave on Mount Horeb that God wasn't in the earthquake, the wind, or the fire. 1 Kings 19:12 says it was a still small voice. The Hebrew word there is kol demama daka, the sound of gentle silence. Your Saturday blessing will arrive in gentle silence. And if you're too busy looking for thunder, you'll miss it completely. The problem? Most seniors have been disappointed so many times that they've trained themselves not to hope. You've built walls around your heart to protect yourself from one more letdown. So when heaven whispers, you can't hear it anymore. The volume of your past pain drowns out the frequency of your present provision. But here's the test of stage 1. Will you recognize the whisper? Will you have the spiritual sensitivity to say, "That's it. That small thing is my Saturday moment," even when your mind screams it's too small to matter? Type I will recognize the whisper if you refuse to miss your moment, because it doesn't match your expectations. Now listen. Once you receive it, once you recognize that whisper and say yes, you enter stage 2. And this is where 80% of believers lose everything. Stage 2 is what I call the internal stretch, the returning. Here's what nobody tells you about breakthrough. The moment heaven deposits blessing into your life, everything in you that's incompatible with that blessing rises to the surface. Every wound you buried, every fear you suppressed, every toxic pattern you learned from poverty, it all comes flooding back. Why? Because God doesn't just want to change your bank account, He wants to change your identity. And identity transformation requires emotional detox. Think about the children of Israel. For 400 years they were slaves in Egypt. They prayed for freedom. They cried out for deliverance. And when God finally brought them out, what happened? Within weeks, they were begging to go back. Exodus 16:3 records their words, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted." They preferred familiar bondage to unfamiliar blessing, because the blessing required them to become different people, and different felt dangerous. Dear one, when your windfall arrives, old memories will surface. You'll remember your mother's voice saying, "We're not the kind of family that has money." You'll hear your father's defeat echoing in your mind. Don't get your hopes up. You'll feel that childhood shame of wearing hand-me-downs, of free lunch tickets, of lights getting shut off. And here's the trap. You'll think those feelings mean you're not worthy of the blessing. You'll think the memories are signs from God that you should give it back, turn it down, return to your comfortable poverty. But that's a lie. Those feelings aren't disqualification, they're detoxification. Your soul is purging the poison of lack so it can hold the weight of abundance. The question is, will you let the old identity die? Will you sit in the discomfort of becoming someone new? Or will you run back to Egypt because at least you knew who you were there? This is why Jesus said in Luke 5:37, "No one pours new wine into old wineskins." The old container can't hold the new blessing. You must be stretched, transformed, remade. But if you survive stage 2, if you let God stretch you without running back to familiar limitation, you enter stage 3. And this is where the miracle multiplies. Stage 3 is releasing, purpose activation. See, the blessing was never meant to stop with you. It was meant to flow through you. Like breath, you inhale to receive, you hold to transform, but you must exhale to give life to someone else. This is when doors start opening that you didn't even knock on. This is when your children call asking for wisdom instead of money. This is when strangers are drawn to your peace. This is when your testimony becomes someone else's breakthrough. Proverbs 11:25 declares, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." The windfall becomes a river, not a reservoir, and rivers never run dry. But here's the truth that will set you free. The blessing is a cycle, not an event. It's not a one-time deposit. It's a metabolism. Receive, transform, release. Then the cycle begins again, deeper, wider, more powerful each time. Are you ready for all 3 stages? Or are you going to stop at stage 1 and wonder why the money disappeared? Now listen to me very carefully, because what I'm about to tell you is going to explain everything you've been feeling since this Saturday started approaching. And beloved, if you've been confused, if you've been scared, if you've been wondering why a blessing feels like a burden, this is for you. Why does your chest feel heavy when you should feel light? Why are tears coming out of nowhere when you're supposed to be celebrating? Why are memories from 40 years ago suddenly flooding your mind like they happened yesterday? You thought something was wrong with you. You thought maybe you weren't ready for the blessing. You thought perhaps God made a mistake choosing you. But what if I told you that everything you're feeling right now is proof that the surgery has already begun? You see, when God decides to pour supernatural wealth into your life, He doesn't just drop money into a broken vessel. He repairs the vessel first. He doesn't pour new wine into old wineskins. He renovates. He reconstructs. He performs what I call spiritual surgery. And surgery, beloved, always comes with pain before the healing. Think about this. When you go to a hospital for surgery, what does the doctor do first? He cuts you open. He exposes what's been hidden. He removes what's diseased. And for days afterward, you feel worse before you feel better. The incision hurts. The stitches pull. Every movement reminds you that something inside you has been rearranged. That's exactly what's happening to you right now in the spiritual realm. God is reopening places you sealed shut decades ago. That divorce you never fully processed, He's touching it. That business failure that made you stop dreaming, He's excavating it. That moment your children disappointed you and you locked your heart away, He's unlocking it, because you can't carry new wealth with old wounds still bleeding in secret. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new." But do you know what that word passed away means in the original Greek? It means violently removed, forcefully extracted, not gently fading but deliberately cut out. This is why you feel strange. This is why last Tuesday you cried for no reason. This is why you woke up Wednesday morning thinking about your mother who's been gone 20 years. This is why Thursday you felt anger you thought you'd forgiven. God is not hurting you. He's removing the rust from the treasure chest. You cannot receive clean money with dirty hands. You cannot hold divine wealth with fingers still gripping ancient bitterness. You cannot walk into overflow while carrying containers filled with unforgiveness. So He's emptying you out first. I know this is hard to hear. I know you wanted this to be easy. You wanted the windfall to come wrapped in a bow with no strings attached. But chosen one, easy blessings create weak believers. The wealth that's coming Saturday requires a container strong enough to hold it without cracking under the pressure. Look at Joseph. Genesis 41 tells us that one day he was in prison, and the next day he was second in command over all of Egypt. One day wearing chains, the next day wearing Pharaoh's signet ring. But do you think that transition was smooth? Do you think Joseph walked out of that dungeon feeling confident and clear? No. He walked out disoriented, confused, probably terrified. Because elevation without preparation is devastation waiting to happen. This is why you feel heavy. It's not depression, it's divine anesthesia. God is putting parts of your soul to sleep so He can operate on them without you interfering. That numbness you feel, that's not emotional shutdown. That's heaven saying, "Be still, let me work. Stop trying to fix yourself and let me rebuild you." Some of you are experiencing what I call prophetic grief. You're mourning the old version of yourself that has to die before the new version can be born. You're grieving the poverty mindset that kept you safe in smallness. You're letting go of the identity that said, "I'm just getting by," because God is about to make you an overcomer who overflows. And grief, dear one, is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of transformation. Jesus wept at Lazarus's tomb, even though He knew He was about to raise him from the dead. Why? Because death, even temporary death, deserves to be acknowledged. And the old you is dying this week. The version of you that accepted lack as normal, she's dying. The version of you that believed poverty was piety, he's dying. And you need to let them go. But here's what most believers miss. Here's the mystery that will change everything. There is one emotional reaction after blessing that proves you are transforming. One specific feeling that confirms heaven's surgery is working. One sensation that separates those who will keep the windfall from those who will lose it within months. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. But if you're feeling it right now, if your spirit just jumped when I mentioned it, you already know. Type, "I accept the surgery" in the comments. Not because I need you to, but because heaven is watching to see who's willing to go under the knife for the sake of their calling. Who's brave enough to let God cut away what's comfortable to make room for what's coming? Because, beloved, what God is about to deposit into your account Saturday is not just money, it's a test. And only those who've been surgically prepared will pass it. But there's something else you need to understand about this surgery, something that will determine whether you wake up whole or wounded, and it has everything to do with what happens in the next 48 hours. Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred moment, hold on to 3 eternal truths. First, this Saturday is not random. It's a divine appointment marked in heaven's ledger before you were born. The financial windfall coming is covenant, not coincidence. Second, the spiritual surgery you're feeling, that heaviness, those tears, those surfacing memories, it's not punishment. It's preparation. God is removing the rust from your treasure chest so you can hold what's coming. Third, one wrong move can cancel everything. Not because God is cruel, but because supernatural wealth requires supernatural wisdom. You cannot receive new blessing with an old mindset, but you are not walking this path alone. Right now, the God who parted the Red Sea is working behind your Saturday. He hasn't forgotten you. Your name is still on his lips. Your breakthrough is still on his agenda. And you have this community. Look at these comments. We are here. We are praying. We are believing with you that Saturday is your day of divine reversal. So let me ask you, if God has already marked Saturday as your day of financial breakthrough, what are you going to do in the next 48 hours to prepare your heart to receive it? Now, close your eyes. Place your hand on your heart. Receive this prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you carrying every soul who heard this message. You see their bank accounts, their medical bills, their sleepless nights. Let this Saturday be their Red Sea moment. Let supernatural money enter their lives, clean wealth that pays every debt, restores what was stolen, and positions them to bless others. But Father, finish the surgery first. Heal wounds they've carried for decades. Remove bitterness that would poison their blessing. Cut away the poverty mindset that whispers they don't deserve abundance. Surround them with your presence this week. When doubt creeps in, remind them of your faithfulness. When fear whispers, Saturday is just another day, let your spirit shout it's a Kairos moment. Station angels around their faith. Protect this blessing, Lord. Guard it from manipulation, misuse, and the enemy's schemes. Let their story become testimony. Let their overflow become someone else's hope. In Jesus' mighty name, I seal this prayer. Let Saturday be the day their life changes forever. Amen. Now, I need to hear from you. Comment below what stirred in your spirit. Ask this community to pray for specific breakthrough areas. We will stand in the gap with you. If this message touched your soul, share this video. There's someone in your life who needs to hear their windfall is coming. You might be the vessel God uses to deliver that message. Subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. Every week we release messages for chosen ones like you. You belong here. This is your family. Thank you for staying until the very end. Your faithfulness tells me you are someone who finishes what you start. And God honors finishers. Saturday is coming, beloved. Your financial windfall is on the way. The vault is about to open. Walk into this week with your head high, your faith anchored deep, your expectations set on heaven. You are chosen. You are loved. You are about to witness God's faithfulness. Until we meet again, go in peace, power, and confidence that your story is about to change. God bless you mightily. Saturday is yours.